Hello there, and welcome to a special episode of Magic by Design. We have come to the end of our second season, as it were, having watched and reviewed every Pixar movie. So before we move on to the next phase of the podcast, we thought we'd gather our thoughts on the existing Pixar film collection as a whole via a slightly different top 5 episode.
We're gathering our thoughts.
Wait till you're introduced.
Gather. It's wordplay.
I shall explain in a moment, but here to wrap up the Pixar podcasts is my co-host, /brother/interrupter. He's Gar.
It's been a while since I've interrupted the intro. It feels nostalgic now.
Yeah, you have to do it every few months just to get my blood pressure up.
Keep you on your toes, just interject with tremendous wordplay.
Yes, Gar, so we did it in Kanto last week, but we decided to come back and wrap up Pixar.
In Kento.
Gar, you're just a pun machine today.
I'm so good. I'm very punchy.
We've decided to break down the best of Pixar using an awards show format. So we've distilled the ingredients of Pixar success into 6 key components with 5 nominees each. We will reveal the nominees and then hash it out between us /argue to decide the winner.
It's very boring if we're like, I think this should win. I also think that should win. Well, next category.
We are aligned, as they say in business terms.
No one likes business terms.
But before we commence the main award ceremony, we will kick off with a special mention, the Pixar Hidden Gem Award. It's
a real award, just that I added at the last minute.
Yes, it's a real award, but it's like one of those ones that's before the telecast.
So, yeah, what are the nominees here in the Pixar Hidden Gem Award, Ken?
Okay, we have Luca, Finding Dory, Ratatouille, A Bug's Life, and a surprise one, Gar. I didn't tell you about this. Cars.
The one Ken added, so that there's 5.
Well, in fairness, Cars is a pleasant surprise, I think.
I think it does get a bad rap. Cars is a good, solid little movie and people treat it like it's dog. Whereas Cars 2 is actual dog.
Yeah, if we had a worst award, we're trying to stay positive here, but if we did, it would be Cars 2.
Yeah, Cars 2 by a long margin as well. Because there's some boring, kind of not great Pixar movies. You get the Monsters Universities, you get the Braves, which are they're perfectly fine, but they're nothing special remotely. And then you get Cars 2, which is just abhorrent in every possible imaginable way.
So, Gar, I have a front runner here.
So do I.
I believe, and it's quite surprising because it's a very recent film, that Luca should win this award.
Yes. I suggested this category solely so we could give Luca an award.
And you said solely there, but Soul isn't nominated, Gar.
This is what I call the B-tier Pixar, but actually better. It's the ones people generally consider B-tier, but are in fact A-tier. And I think Luca perfectly fits that category. And all the movies, Finding Dory is the best non-Toy Story sequel. You always have to specify that. Of the rest of the sequels, Finding Dory is the best, and it most justifies its existence as a sequel. Ratatouille was an interesting one for me to even put in this category, because it has its fans.
And it was well received at the time, but it does fall down the pecking order in the large scheme of things now.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask people to rate their top 5 Pixar films, the average person probably wouldn't have Ratatouille in there, and Ratatouille is a great movie. And then A Bug's Life is your B-tier. Bug's Life is it's the second movie, so...
It's the OG one. It's the OG B-tier Pixar.
They came right in there immediately and established the category that is B-tier Pixar, and it's a very good, enjoyable film. But Luca, I wanted this category just to give Luca an award.
But the thing about Luca is, I think it does embody the award because we had the pandemic. I know Soul came out first on Disney+, but it kind of came out in June. As cinemas were opening, people were more concerned with, getting their lives back on track. So I do think it fell under the radar a bit.
Yeah, it deserves all the plaudits in the world. It's a great movie. And it will stick with you. You'll just think about it. I think the fact that we're stuck in this hellhole country for a very long time because of COVID, and we will be for even longer probably, and it just makes me at least I can vicariously live in the Italian countryside by watching Luca.
Yeah, it's true. It is like travelling while staying in your house. Moving on to the next category, Gar, we're into the music categories. It's Best Score or Music. And in this category, we have the nominees Toy Story, Original, Luca, again, fair play Luca, Coco, Up, and The Incredibles.
I will say, I think WALL-E got dumped at the last minute.
Yeah.
Also a great score.
So honourable mention to WALL-E.
Yeah, this is a tough one. That Toy Story is Pixar's soundscape.
Yes, their template.
That's what Pixar is. So it's very hard to vote against it. Luca just has gorgeous music.
It's been stuck in my head for the 3 weeks since we recorded that episode.
Yeah, Coco, great music. Up breaks your heart. Like that and they play it very sadly when the sad things happen. It gets in your brain, it makes you feel sad. And then like the low-key one that I was considering voting for is The Incredibles.
It is so memorable and different than the other Pixar films.
And it gets over like that spy thing as well, and it just has the big bombastic superhero themes. Especially when we look at the modern slate of superhero movies. You know, I just went to see Spider-Man this week, and Spider-Man has a relatively distinct theme song, but it's not great. And then you listen to The Incredibles, where it's like da 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 da. It's like, oh, it's so perfect for what that is and what they're going for that I'm almost leaning toward Incredibles.
I'm quite coloured by Luca at the moment, but only because we saw it most recently and I was very enamored with the score. But if I'm speaking with my mind, you know, my intellectual mind, having watched all these films, I would push up to the top of the list.
Because that does do a lot of heavy lifting. So we're already in a category where we might disagree. So we'll have to like, Up is more of a traditional Pixar score in every way, so it's probably more representative of Pixar.
True, and the simplicity of it is the genius in my view, because as you just mentioned, it's the same piece of music used to different effect. We see it for happiness, for nostalgia, for sadness, even for adventure at the end as we come to the climax, and the music feels completely different every time.
Alright, I'll concede. Even though Incredibles, rock solid runner-up.
Yes, I would consider it the runner-up as well.
Yeah, only good thing about Incredibles 2 is you get to hear the music again.
Yeah, exactly. So, well done to Up there, well deserved. Moving on here, Gar, to Best Original Song. Mm-hmm. So, there are songs in Pixar movies, not many, that are not original songs.
Yeah, we had some problems with this where I was like, let's include Life as a Highway by Rascal Flatts, and Ken was like, that's not an original song as well. God damn it. Now I was like, It's Alright from Soul. I'm like, oh, that's a great song, let's include that. It's Ken's like, that's also not an original song, it's a cover for the movie, the John Baptiste version. So I'm like, well, God damn it.
So the nominees here are You've Got a Friend in Me from the Toy Story franchise. It's in all 4 films.
Well, it's the same song every time, so it's Toy Story 1.
Yeah, essentially. When She Loved Me from Toy Story 2, Coming Down from WALL-E, Remember Me from Coco, and Proud Corazon from Coco.
Worth noting, Randy Newman, You've Got a Friend in Me, Sarah McLachlan for When She Loved Me, Coming Down as Peter Gabriel, and then it's the actors in the movie who sing the Coco songs. Sorry for not knowing them off the top of my head. Before
we get to the winner, Gar, honourable mentions to I Will Go Sailing No More from Toy Story.
Good song. Very well used in that movie.
The Time of Your Life from A Bug's Life. Not necessarily the most genius song, but it is just a nice song.
It feels a bit like it's a leftover Toy Story track.
True. If I Didn't Have You from Monsters, Inc.
I don't remember it.
I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have
Oh yeah,
you.
that's pretty good. Okay, yeah, I'll allow it as an honourable mention. This one, there's some good songs here. I love Coming Down by Peter Gabriel.
I do.
And I adore that credit sequence where you see like them repopulating the earth and planting things as it plays over that. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, we noted that at the time. It's an extension of the movie.
Again, You've Got a Friend in Me is like the Pixar soundscape. Again, that's like the Pixar song. It's the most defining like piece of music in Pixar. Every time they play it in a Toy Story movie, it hits you right in the feelings every single time.
Yeah, little tears in the corners of my eyes.
When they played it in Kingdom Hearts 3, I was like, oh God, you're doing it again. But for me, it's very easy. It's When She Loved Me.
I'll co-sign on that, Gar. I agree. Because if there was an Oscar at the time, that portion of the movie alone, much like Up, the first 10 minutes, would have won the Oscar.
Yeah, you could take... there's not a short animated feature Oscar, I don't think. But
there is, yes.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Well, if you took that sequence from the movie with no further context, just that song and that animated sequence, and you put it as like a short, it should win the Oscar for Best Animated Short. That song does so much of the emotional heavy lifting of that movie. In fact, I don't think anything else does the emotional heavy lifting of that movie. It's just like, we know this works, and we're going to put it here, and we don't need to do any more work. Because that does all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's largely an adventure/comedy film. You know, I would say the other Toy Stories have more emotional depth, but, you know, they basically have their fun caper and have that one poignant moment just to hit you in the feels.
Yeah, and make you care about these characters and care about that last act and care about where they end up. And like this song is what does that.
And it encapsulates the major fear of all toys. And you get it, because it's basically existential dread, and we all get that. And it really encapsulates, the journey of these toys, as you said.
And we didn't even mention the two Coco songs, but Remember Me, I really loved how they used the multiple versions of that.
Yeah, much like Up as well.
Yeah, where they used the different characters singing that song meant different things, and I thought that was really neat. And Proud Corazon, like, Pixar is known for, like, their little wrap-up song,
Yeah.
And this is probably the best of them.
Yeah, it's a nice song. It's catchy as heck. Like, I remember I was listening to the Luca soundtrack, and Spotify, for some reason, it knows me very well, goes straight onto that song after it finishes.
Yeah, and you're just like, na 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 na. Ken's very happy.
Not surprising, written by the Lopez's. So
yeah, When She Loved Me, just the best Pixar song. It's probably not even close.
Moving out of the music categories, Gar, into the writing, and we're here with Best Story. So the nominees are Coco, Inside Out, Monsters, Inc., Ratatouille, and The Incredibles.
Yeah, this is an interesting category because we're thinking about stories. So we're thinking like, my thought process was like, which is the most creative? If you take out like all of the emotional work in the characters and just think about it just as like a piece of imagination, which is best, which is what I was thinking about for this category.
Yeah, me too. What's the premise that most sparks my imagination, or what do they most think about afterwards? Pixar's main strength is their world building, and that's why we have the story category. And like, while they did a great job of fleshing out these worlds, which were the ones that I thought about more afterwards, and these were it.
So you have Coco with the like really well implemented Day of the Dead stuff. Like, so well thought out and well considered in a well-built world. You have Inside Out, again, the same thing. It's like inside of the brain. Everything about the writing of that movie, everything about the concept is just so smart. You have Monsters, Inc., which is so high concept, but so well executed that like, it scares, power, happy, power. It's a really good, simple moral built on these stupid, goofy monsters trying to scare the hell out of children indoors and all that fun stuff. Then you get Ratatouille, which, like, you might not think, actually, no, it is like a super creative story. I was going to be like, it's more than the more grounded one. It's like a rat uses a human to become a world famous chef. Good story. And then Incredibles, which is your, standard superhero tale.
What I like about Incredibles, though, is that it's a standard superhero tale, but, there's the aftermath when this whole premise that supers go underground because they cause too much damage, they're sanctioned by the government, and how do they adjust to real life? And I think the family dynamics and the dialogue that came out of that was really compelling and interesting.
Yeah, do you have a favourite here, Ken?
I do. I find it quite tough. I would be between Inside Out and Monsters, Inc.
So am I. And I think on the basis that I may argue stronger for Inside Out for a different award, I'd lean towards Monsters, Inc.
Yeah. I think either one could comfortably win, but Monsters, Inc. is possibly the blueprint for that wild imagination piece. I know Toy Story, obviously. It's one of those things we all wondered as a child, and we all pretended our toys were alive, but Monsters, Inc. is just that pure Pixar imagination and storytelling.
It just feels like such a cohesive world. It's one of those where they just thought about everything, and everything makes sense, and everything ties to a lovely little moral in the end, and it's very good stuff. So I would vote Monsters, Inc.
Yep, I will go with that as well, Gar. So well done to Monsters, Inc. for Best Pixar Story.
So we're on to Best Animation, Ken, which is basically which of the last 6 films was prettiest.
Yeah, because ever since they changed their systems and their tools, and they've honed this technology as computers have become infinitely powerful, the last few films have really hit it out of the park in terms of visuals.
Yeah, because the oldest film here we have in Best Animation is Inside Out in 2015. And that's not a knock on the films that came before it. It's just the natural advancement of technology. That our 5 nominees here are Luca, Toy Story 4, Inside Out, Coco, and Soul. They're just astounding looking movies. And the old ones just simply, based on technology, cannot look as good. And I don't think that's even the case if we were to do a similar category for the Disney movies. Where it's I think you'd probably be able to make a decent case that Sleeping Beauty is still one of the best looking Disney movies. Where I think you'd have a very hard time making the case that A Bug's Life is still one of the best looking Pixar movies.
We said that about Bambi as well.
Yeah, so I think it's the nature of 3D animation that as we move on, the older ones are left further in the dust through no fault of their own. They all look good at the time. Even now they still look pretty good. There's only occasional hiccups that you're it's a shame that they were made 25 years ago. And I don't think that applies to 2D animation. So Luca, just lovely. It's just lovely to look at.
And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. It's not photorealistic at all times, but it's a mixture of a storybook. It has that really appealing, interesting stop motion look for the characters. The backdrop is gorgeous because it's vibrant, it's colourful. They're just flexing with those rocks and those water scenes as well.
You get Toy Story 4, which I think is very fun to see because you can see the progression through the Toy Story series of like the progression of Pixar's animation. Where it's like you get their stock style in Toy Story and then Toy Story 2 looks more or less the same. And then you get like the 10-year later jump of Toy Story 3 where it's like, oh, look how far they've come. And then you get the, 9-year later jump again for Toy Story 4 and you're like, good God, this studio is so good at this now. And you can see all the fibers in Woody's vest and you can see the scuffs on Buzz's helmet and you can just see all those details now.
Yeah. Their bodies tell the story of the Toy Story franchise because you see all the miles they've had on them because, they're toys they were played with. They're going to get scuffed up anyway, but these are toys that have jumped out of airplanes and done all sorts of things.
And now moving on to like their third owner.
So I think it may be a bit pat to say, but I would go with Soul on this one.
Yeah, because you have Inside Out that you have... Like, I'm torn here. I'll finish running through them first. You get Inside Out, which I think is bright and colourful and amazing to look at, and the way they just, render the inside of the head in all of the ways, the different, aspects of the personality, the different lands they go through, and the way they depict all that. It's just so fun to look at. Then you get Coco, in which I think the Land of the Dead sequences of Coco are so, detailed. There's those, vast... You can just pause and look at all the details in the corner of this gigantic, sprawling Land of the Dead that I don't think any of these other films have that kind of depth to the animation. And then you get Soul, which is the best looking, far and away. The New York sequences of Soul look borderline real. And I don't even think that's a thing I'm going to look back on and go, how did I think that looked real? In the same way you see, reviews of N64 games from 1996 being they look basically real. And now you see the, blocky polygons, these look like... Whereas I think, looking at Soul, it's you're going to look at Soul in, 5 years and be like, oh yeah, that's so good. And in 10 years, it's it's so good. And it'll get better, but you'll still be oh, it's so good. But I'm torn between Soul and Coco. Basically, I'm torn between the two sides of Pixar. It's the really cool Pixar style animation of Coco, and particularly, as I said, Land of the Dead stuff. And then them pushing toward the new, photorealistic, just draw-dropping, beautiful animation.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But if I were, now that you've said it, if I'm to say what I'm drawn to more character-wise and what's more appealing to me, I would say Coco.
I think I'd lean toward Coco too.
So, Gar, I think this is a toss-up category between those two. And if we were to have a technical award like they have at the Oscars, Soul would win it hands down.
Far and away.
But I think Coco stands out just for the sheer inventiveness of the world.
And the Pixar-ness of it all. And it feels like Pixar animation instead of Soul, which does feel like Pixar being again, we keep on dunking on Good Dinosaur for this, but the discord between the two styles of the Good Dinosaur, which doesn't exist in Soul. The character models of Soul are more or less similar to the world they live in, both in the before life and in the actual world. But yeah, I'd go with Coco. I think it's more representative of Pixar.
We're down to the final two awards, Gar. The next one is Best Performance by an Actor in a Pixar Movie. So we're going all in here, no male or female category.
It's a good thing we didn't do Best Performance by an Actor in a freaking Marvel movie.
Yeah.
I like the way you include it in a Pixar movie, just in case.
Just in case, Gar. It's just to make sure that there are no mistakes. We have Tom Hanks as Woody, Toy Story 1-4. Albert Brooks as Marlin in Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. Ed Asner as Carl Fredricksen in Up. Amy Poehler as Joy in Inside Out, and Gail Garcia Bernal as Hector in Coco.
Yeah, and some honorable mentions too. Ellen DeGeneres, I know she's cancelled, but she was really good in the movies.
She would have made the list if she wasn't cancelled.
Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, and Richard Kind as Bing Bong in Inside Out, just because your heart was pulled out of your chest. Come on.
Yeah, and Richard Kind is a great actor, very versatile. People think he's one note, that he has a shtick, but he has a great range.
I find this category really, really tough.
Yeah.
Because, there's one that's a towering giant, and that's Tom Hanks.
Of course.
Who is sensational as Woody in so many different ways that we've talked about. Go listen to our Toy Story episodes. You get Albert Brooks, who is sensational in Finding Nemo.
And Finding Dory, even though he's more of a side character in that movie.
Yeah, it would be more for Finding Nemo, where he is just the heart and soul of that movie. He's so good. You get Ed Asner, who is sensational in Up. And I don't think the Up is nearly as good without Ed Asner's performance and the specificity of his grumpiness.
Yeah, but the grumpiness belies grief as well. He just encapsulates that grief, that determination to fulfill his wife's wishes. And like, I think it can be underplayed. He's like a grumpy old man, but I do think he imbues it with that pathos and that grief and that sadness that we noted in the original episode.
You get Amy Poehler, who's playing like type in some ways, but she's subverting her type in others. Like she's playing that high energy happy person, which is what Amy Poehler is known for playing. But also there's like a desperation to that high energy happy person that she's playing here, that she has to be relentless and maintain that high energy happy person at the expense of like her own emotional well-being. And that's all there in the performance. I think it's a really good performance and a really smart piece of casting.
And it does resonate with a lot of millennials and, you know, even the subsequent generations, that there is this social media world where you have to be perfect, or not even social media, you have to have the right career, the right job, everything has to be perfect. So it does connect with a lot of people.
Yeah, and then there's Gael Garcia Bernal, who's like probably there's the most range in his performance, probably, where he's playing like the front of being like that charismatic, you know, just
kooky character, yeah,
jokester, but really like similar to Amy Poehler's character. There's a desperation because obviously he's about to die. Like
the real death, the forever death.
Actually die. So there's like a bunch of pathos and comedy and desperation and sadness, and like I think it's the widest range in his performance. I'm not sure. I have a favourite. Do you have a favourite?
I do have a favourite. I have an intellectual favourite and I have a heart favourite.
Go on, give me both.
If you're to say, you know, as you said, there's the towering giant. If you're going to be logical about it, it has to be Tom Hanks as Woody. But I do love Ed Asner as Carl in Up.
I was going to lean toward Ed Asner too. I think Woody, like Tom Hanks' Woody performance is superb on every level. But I think the person whose performance is most essential to their individual film is Ed Asner's. His Carl, as I said, there's a specificity to his grumpiness, and he plays that like slow melting heart to absolute perfection, and he doesn't overplay it to be like, oh, I'm a giant sap now. It's like, no, I'm still a grumpy old man. I just tolerate you people around me now.
The beauty of it is, I think we mentioned this in the episode as well, you can't pinpoint the moment when it happens. It's not that rote animation, complete 180 change of pace. Like, we just don't know when it happens because it's happened so subtly. And I think he hasn't even fully thought out by the end of the movie, which I think is realistic as well.
So I'd lean Ed Asner.
Yeah, Ed Asner. We're actually very pleased to posthumously award that to him as best performance by an actor. R.I.P. again, Ed Asner. He died on the day we recorded the Up episode.
Very weird.
If you want to see his last performance as Carl, he is in Dug Days on Disney+.
That good?
It is good, and it's only like, the max an episode is like 6 minutes.
Oh.
We've come to the main award of the night, Gar, Best Picture. This is a hard one, because you could nominate 10 movies here.
Just picking the Toy Story movie that we put in this category is hard. Never mind the rest of it.
So we have Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., WALL-E, Inside Out, and Coco make up our 5 nominees, with honourable mentions to Soul, Luca, Up, and all the other Toy Story movies.
All of them. Even 4, which I think is better than 3.
People fought you about that on Twitter.
You were very mad at me when I said that on Twitter. Alright, so I think Toy Story 2 is an exceptional piece of filmmaking.
It is.
I think Monsters Inc. is an exceptional piece of filmmaking. I think Coco is an exceptional piece of filmmaking. But for me, this category is between WALL-E and Inside Out.
Interesting. Make your case.
So I'm leaning Inside Out because I think Inside Out is like the smartest movie they've ever made. And I think like a lot of these movies you'll get people who will be snobs about. But if you don't relate to the themes in Inside Out, you're just a monster. You just don't have a brain. No one is in there. Like, you'll pan to the shot of the brain and it'll just be empty. I'm disappointed we haven't given WALL-E an award.
Yeah, it does feel like it deserves one. And as we said at the time, the themes are universal because it's love, and prescient in terms of the climate change.
Yeah, whole climate crisis thing, planet destroyed. So like, I think the 2 best movies they've made are WALL-E and Inside Out. I'm leaning Inside Out. How are you feeling?
If I were to say, it's a tough one because like, I remember specifically bouncing out of the cinema and like, I can't wait to see WALL-E again, and I bought it on Blu-ray. It's the first ever Blu-ray I ever bought. But as you said, Inside Out is the smartest movie they've ever done. It just plumbs depths of emotion, that no other Pixar film does. Like, they all have emotional aspects, but none of them are more central to me as a person, because
It's literally about you as a person.
Exactly, you can relate to it. You can you can identify with Riley and her struggle, but also the fact that, we all go through those inner turmoils, and to put a face to them is actually very interesting and very it's just the most imaginative, it's the smartest, it's funny, it has great animation, it has a great score. It doesn't necessarily have great songs, but it's not important. It doesn't have any songs, in fact.
It doesn't have a Peter Gabriel banger over the credits.
Yeah.
By and large. Is that a song? It's a jingle, I guess.
Yeah. What I'd be inclined to do is, I think I'll agree with you and give it Inside Out.
You don't want to make a case, by the way, for Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc. or Coco?
I don't, because I think that we've recognised them throughout the podcast, and I think we all know that they are great films.
And yet they did all win other awards, which is part of the reason I was like, Monsters, Inc. Best Story is because I wanted to make the case for Inside Out. But then when I was making the case for Inside Out, I was like, well, god damn it, we've given nothing to WALL-E. I think WALL-E is probably the second best Pixar movie, and we've given it no awards.
That's how it's shaken out, Gar. But a strong second place for WALL-E.
Yeah, go watch WALL-E too. But yeah, Inside Out, for all the reasons you just talked about, it is exceptionally smart and heartwarming and extremely well animated with a great score. And just, it's everything Pixar does well. And at a time when people probably thought Pixar lost their touch, at a time when they were making their Cars 2s and their Braves and their Monsters Universities and their Incredibles 2s, people were like, oh geez, Pixar isn't the studio they are anymore. And then they deliver this, which is like their just most emotionally intelligent piece of filmmaking so far. So thumbs up. Good job, Pixar. Still, WALL-E, great. Honorary category. Best film named WALL-E goes to WALL-E. Well done. WALL-E has an award now.
I am actually very heartened by the fact that Soul and Luca were in the conversation for Best Picture. And I think we talked about it when we ended the last episode on Pixar. But I do feel like, they hit a shaky period. They were bought by Disney. Disney were focused on sequels. Now they've shifted to focusing on originals and new voices, different directors, different writers, and you can feel that originality and that spark starting to reform, because they've had a run of hits now that, I'll be going back to those movies for years.
And hopefully we have Lightyear and we have Turning Red coming up soon, so hopefully those are good. Lightyear I don't have much hope for. Turning Red, hopefully. Yes,
we saw the trailer for Turning Red in the cinema when we saw Encanto, and they use 90s music, but I think, they actually use it in a really good way. So I'm hopeful for that movie, even though it seems a little bit commercial, but I think the 90s boy band music is a stylistic choice based on who's directing it. So I'm hopeful for the future of Pixar, Gar, and I look forward to reviewing the future movies.
Yeah, and we'll still be doing that. We'll be taking, I assume, breaks from whatever we're doing next, Ken. So, what are we doing next?
Let me tell you, Gar, but I'll leave you in suspense while we do the credits.
Oh, he has to do the outro first.
Alright, that brings our Pixar Awards show to an end. New episodes of Magic by Design land every Monday, where all magical podcasts are downloaded. Stop by our website at magicbydesign.buzzsprout.com to find a full list of podcast platforms. We are literally everywhere in the pod sphere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. We're big in Germany, Brazil.
Are we?
We get consistent listeners in Germany.
Yeah.
How are you? Hello to our Brazilian listeners as well, and our sometimes China listeners when they can break through the regime's wall of silence.
China.
If you want to keep up with all things Magic by Design, you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Magic by Design Pod, on Twitter at Magic Design Pod, and on Instagram at Magic by Design Pod. As always, we sure would appreciate if you would consider giving us a review on your podcast platform of choice, sharing the podcast on your socials, or perhaps even recommend the show to a fellow Disney fan.
Yeah, tell everybody. We've done all of them now. We've talked about all of the Disney movies and all of the Pixars.
Yeah, we've done 84 episodes, a couple of specials now. Is that not worth 5 stars?
Yeah, all of the stars. We deserve the stars.
Join us next week as we begin phase 3 of the podcast with a deep dive into the direct-to-video sequels of theatrically released Disney animated features, starting with The Return of Jafar.
Woo! I hope they're not all terrible.
Yeah, so we're going to be going through the Aladdin sequels, we're going to be going through the Lion King sequels, etc. There's a lot of Lilo and Stitch sequels. I'm sure you'll be happy with that, Gar.
I'm on board with more Lilo and Stitch sequels. Stitch as a glitch? We doing Stitch as a glitch?
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
That's the third one, though, isn't it? Because there's Stitch the movie first.
Yeah, there's quite a few there. And you will hear us talk about them in the future weeks. But until then, stay safe and thanks for the adventure. Now let's have a new one. I adjusted the up quote, Gar.
Oh, well done.
Now then, resident Magic by Design singer Nicole is here to bring down the curtain on the Pixar era of Magic by Design for now, with a reprise of her award-winning take on When She Loved Me from Toy Story 2. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
When somebody loved me, everything was beautiful. Every hour we spent together lives within my heart. And when she was sad, I was there to dry her tears. And when she was happy, so was I. When she loved me. Through the summer and the fall, we had each other, that was all. Just she and I together, like it was meant to be. And when she was lonely, I was there to comfort her, and I knew that she loved me. So the years went by, I stayed the same, but she began to drift away. I was left alone. Still I waited for the day when she'd say, I will always love you. Lonely and forgotten, never thought she'd look my way. And she smiled at me and held me just like she used to do. Like she loved me when she loved me. When somebody loved me, everything was beautiful. Every hour we spent together lives within